Well, are you real clear and grounded? Because I know Francis teaches it, and I read it and sweat with it, but that there's only one consciousness.
Yeah.
You have that clearly now.
I had to do a lot of work in this regards. It was very clear to me, Jordan, that I was awareness, but that awareness seemed personal to me for a very long time. And you
Right.
and I talked about that for a long time. I was one of the things that I talked to Eckhart Tolle about when I was with him initially. And I had to do a lot of research on that. I went on to Krishna Menon. Um, was a big help in that. The exploration, starting from the place of realizing that the only thing that we ever experience is perceptions, thoughts, feelings, bodily sensations, sensory perceptions, never the thing in itself that we're experiencing. And then the investigation of realizing where does that perception begin and my awareness end, and where does my awareness end and all that. I had to do a tremendous amount of mind stuff. Not everybody does. What is going on while I'm sitting here talking? Um, are there cab drivers in New York City going on? You know? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I had to go through all that stuff, and I put together a DVD, which was it's very, very intense and difficult to get through, but it's very popular, and it's called Illumination. It's a deep dialogue and interview that I did with Greg Good on the teachings of Atmananda Menon.
Right.
But
So I've
the
watched that 3 times, so
Yeah, it's a tough one.
it
I mean,
needs
really,
more.
it's a tough one, but it's very
Yeah.
helpful. It was big breakthroughs, and I don't think it's fair, Jordan, to think that even having done that and spent a great deal of time with it, uh, it wouldn't have been fair for me to say that 56 years of programming could be disentangled in a matter of hours, days, or weeks. There are still things that are arising. One of the things that Greg said to me in that interview, which just absolutely still sits with me, and this is all getting back to the impersonal nature of consciousness, but it was a hint, and that's what a perception can't be a channel for another perception. And specifically, we were talking about the fact that we perceive the body is a perception, and yet we assume that the tactile sensation that we feel on our hand when it touches something
Mm-hmm.
is somehow being channeled through our arms and up into our head and into our brain. And that's interesting because we've already determined that the only thing that we're seeing here is shape and color. We're seeing a perception, and a perception can't channel anything. And that's a liberating thing because as Francis says, there's both ignorance of the mind, the belief in duality in the mind, the belief that I'm a person with separate beliefs, and et cetera and so forth. But there is a much deeper thing that's not taught very much, which is the ignorance of the body, which is how we perceive the world through our bodies. And that is tied into how we were trained from the time we were 2 months old, how to be a separate body and how to feel space and how to orient ourselves and do all this stuff and how we create all these images and the overlays that go on when we close our eyes and we feel a feeling in our hand. There's no evidence that there's a hand there, and yet we see a hand in our mind's eye. I mean, so there's a tremendous amount of assumption that goes on from all that, and that level of body awareness or body work um, is probably the single biggest reason why people don't get the heart connection, the experiential aspect of non-duality. It's what blocks that Ananda experience. So that's a part of what you go through too. But yeah, the idea of the impersonal nature of consciousness is simply an awareness that there is no limit, that I cannot find a border or a boundary to it. And if there is no border and boundary, how can there be two of them? And if you want to step back intellectually, you could just say, look, there's a Jordan sitting here having a conversation with a Chris. Maybe we just start from the point of view that even though there appears to be one set of beliefs and words coming out from here, one set of belief and words coming out from over there, that wouldn't necessarily mean that the consciousness, which is fundamental, isn't fundamental to both. Okay, that these things arise both from the same consciousness. You can always start from there. I think you're selling yourself short if you end there. Yeah.
If what?
I think you sell yourself short if you end your investigation on the universal nature of consciousness with the idea that, okay, there's a Chris with words coming out of his mouth, there's a Jordan with words coming out of his mouth, and even though there are two minds, there's only one consciousness.
The exploration goes on way beyond that.
Yeah, because what's a mind? Where is the limits of mind? What is mind? Mind is nothing but mentation, and what's mentation other than perception, sensations, thoughts, and feelings? And where are the boundaries of any particular mind? So, I mean, you know, if you're willing to spend the time to take a look at this, the answers are right there. There's nothing that needs to be believed. There's only things that need to be seen. And a lot of it has to do with allowing ourselves to see.